Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on what part of the world you're coming from. We appreciate the fact that you're here. This is the MJJJP Zoom chat. We do these every other month, and we're excited because we have fans from, I've lost count now, but can you tell us how many?
Yeah, well, so far I have Holland, Spain, Guatemala, Philippines, Argentina, USA.
So we are definitely global today, and I'm Melanie from MJJJP and the Michael Jackson Fans of New York, and with me is Buds, who is the founder of MJJP, and we're just so happy that you're here today. I consider all MJ fans also advocates, and we are really blessed today to have two such advocates with us. So I'm going to throw it to Buds and have her introduce our first guest.
Okay, great. So for the first part of this Zoom chat, we are happy to welcome Jin Chohan. I'm going to read a little background on him before I start asking questions. Formerly, he was a dancer. Jin has produced and directed documentaries for UCLA Semel Institute, especially one called Mindful Music, which you should Google and watch. It's very interesting. He has also worked on a series of documentaries for CNN in the editorial department for the 2000 series. He has directed and produced documentaries under his own film company, Takeflight Film Limited, which is a UK-based company. Most of MJ fans know him from his Leaving Neverland, The Aftermath documentary, which was shown at TCL Chinese Theater in Hollywood in June of 2019. And if you haven't watched it, you should check it out on his YouTube. That documentary has almost 500,000 views, which was where when I started noticing Jin after I watched that. So welcome. Welcome everybody from around the world, and welcome Jin Chohan.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome, and we're very excited that you're here. Before I go into the documentaries, I just want to say to everyone that you should go and Google Jin because he has an amazing resume for someone so young. I wanted to ask you, because you play musical instruments, you dance, now you're in film. Have you always been creative, like from a child? Was that always something that was in your head as you were growing up?
Yeah, most definitely. Since I was really little, since I can first remember, actually, I remember my art teacher telling me, just don't give up on this. And I was in the painting class. That was probably one of my first school memories. But I was always artistically minded, and my parents always wanted me to be like a lawyer or a doctor. So there's kind of a clash there.
Yes, yeah. Sometimes is a clash, but I'm glad you went with your creativeness. That's really good. So you paint too.
Yeah, kind of. I dabble.
That's good. That's good. Okay, so I saw in an interview, a 2014 on the street interview, somebody grabbed you and you said that from a very young age you wanted to come to the U.S. So what was your image of the U.S. and why did you feel you wanted to come here?
Since I was really little, I always had an affinity with America for some reason. I remember being 5 years old, telling my parents, "Oh, I really want to live in America," and they kind of brushed it off like, "Oh, it's just a kid." I just love everything about the States. I can't really explain it. I just like being there. I think the people are just happy, and I mean, my only experience is LA. That's where I moved, but I just love the country.
That's good. I'm glad you love the country, especially after what we've just been through. I'm glad you still love it. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about your dance. Since you said you were a dancer, are you still dancing?
Not professionally, no.
Okay, so you were self-trained or you studied at UCLA dance?
Self-trained.
Self-trained. Well, I watched your Good Kisser video with the Usher song, and your spins are Amazing. I mean, 'cause like
Yeah.
Michael Jackson spins, they're just go on and on forever.
I was
Oh,
gonna say, I
thank you.
wonder where you got that from, right?
Yes. So that was my question. Did he influence you a lot in your dance?
Yeah, most definitely. In the beginning, I got into dance because of Michael Jackson. I
Oh,
remember I borrowed the History album off a friend of mine. I was a kid, so this was ages ago. And I remember watching Moonwalker, and I just went insane. I started dancing, and then I moved on to like hip hop styles and locking and all
right,
of this other stuff as I grew up.
right. So, and also in that little interview I caught, you said that you met Eddie Garcia, and he taught you how to dance. Can you tell us a little bit about that? How you met him and how that came about?
Yeah, there's a dance studio. It's actually unfortunately not there anymore in North Hollywood. Debbie Reynolds. It's where Michael Jackson rehearsed the Thriller
Hmm.
routine. And Eddie Garcia was teaching a class there. I think it was the Thriller routine, and we just paid for the class. And he was nice enough to give us stories afterwards, and he taught us the routine of Thriller the way Michael Jackson taught it to him. So there's little nuances that you can only know after Michael Jackson's taught it, and it was really insightful to to how he taught it to us.
Oh, okay. So the little, what was it? Did he work on the video? Was he a dancer in Thriller?
He wasn't a dancer in Thriller. He came on in the Bad tour, and I think he was in the Smooth Criminal video. But Michael Jackson taught him the choreography to do on tour.
Oh, I see. Oh, on tour.
Yeah.
Okay, so you went on tour. Wow. Well,
Hmm.
that's amazing. So you learned how to do the Thriller Michael style.
Yeah, yeah. There's certain noises that he makes in the choreography that you wouldn't really pick up off the video,
Uh,
and it kind of changes your whole body language.
uh-huh. Wow. That's really good. So did he tell you anything specific about Michael?
Uh, I think it was all artistically based. I mean, we were left with the knowledge that he was just so incredibly gifted,
Hmm.
and he allowed people to be artists in their own right. If he employed somebody, he wouldn't like try to hold them down in any kind of way,
Right.
which I thought was really kind of a genius aspect of him. I think that's how he became so successful. He allowed people to be creative in their own right.
Yes. Hmm. To shine. Yeah.
I don't think he was intimidated because he knew that he's Michael Jackson.
Right, right. And I think that's what he told Jennifer Batten too. She said, I think that's what she said about him, that he just wanted me to get out there and just
Yeah,
just reach for the stars and just push me to do my best. So he wasn't trying to outshine. He thought they helped him shine, I think.
yeah,
That was very, maybe that's also part of being creative too. You just, because you want the best, at,
yeah. Of
at
course.
right? So, okay, so and in part of your bio, you said that you transitioned from dance to film easily because they are both forms of visual art. So, when did you decide to transition to film, and what was the impetus for that to happen?
Well, I remember it was December 2014. I used to, because I'm self-trained, what I used to do, I used to record every dance practice session that I did at the gym. And then I would watch it to iron my mistakes out. And then from me recording that, I started putting little choreography, little pieces together. And then I kind of fell in love with the storytelling visually. And then I bought myself a camera in Christmas 2014. And then I think it was in a month I started working weddings, weddings and everything. It took off.
Okay, so you studied entertainment studies. Did you receive a degree or anything, or you just were just dabbling in different things to learn?
Um, that was a certificate. So the entertainment studies, you can do directing, color grading, everything. And then I did directing after that. So I got a certificate from it.
Okay, but so when you got on the, how did you get on the editorial in the editorial department of CNN? That's pretty amazing.
So
Was that
I,
how
I
weird?
was, yeah, I was lucky enough. A friend of mine works for this production company in North Hollywood. And I was applying for jobs, and then she kind of got me in, and then I started working as for the main editors. I was kind of working for them, finding footage and finding little pieces in all the archive footage that they have, because they have so much stuff. Oh my God, they have hundreds, probably
Right.
thousands of hours of stuff.
Yeah, I watched that series. I think Michael was mentioned in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s of the
Oh yeah.
of that CNN series. Yeah, it's amazing. I think he's mentioned more than anybody in that
Oh
series.
wow.
So
It's
it's
funny,
very
I've not even
cool.
watched it. I should watch
Yeah, you should. It's really amazing. Yeah. So also, I noticed that you had a video up. Uh, you were playing a solo of Purple Rain. So you're also musically gifted.
it. I wouldn't say musically gifted. I'm learning the guitar at the moment, so I'm not a guitarist.
Yeah.
I want to become one day.
Well, you did a pretty good job. So, I mean, painting, dancing. Have you tried photography as well?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay. That doesn't surprise me. You're very talented person. I think Michael would have loved to mentor you. I'm telling you, you're
Oh
just
wow.
exactly the kind of person he would want to have mentored for sure. Um, before I go into the documentary, um, Mel, do you have any questions?
I do. I do. I have a question from some fans that wrote in for Jen, and the first question is from Samantha Robinson. Samantha, I hope you're with us right now. Uh, Her question is, what do you want fans to learn from the documentary that you're working on?
So on the documentary, when I started the project after the Aftermath documentary, it actually took me probably 7 months to think of the angle to go through, to the angle to attack the issue at. And I went through so many teaser trailers. I think I did 4 of them. I did all this stuff, all these different names that I came up with, and then I decided what I want people to realize is the huge difference of what we thought in 1984 to 2021.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like you get somebody from 1984 and you bring them today and you ask them, this is how the Michael Jackson story is told today. And it's that huge difference that I'm gonna show in this documentary. It's mainly a story about the media, and Leaving Neverland is the thread that tells that story.
Right, right, for sure. So the timeline is not, when you say trial by media, you're not just focusing on the 2005 trial, you're talking about his whole life, how he was put on trial
Mm-hmm.
through misrepresentation and
That's
mischaracterization.
right. That's
Okay,
exactly right. Yeah.
that's really great. That's really great. That was one of my questions. Okay, so is there, let me go back to my questioning, Mel. Okay.
Okay.
So in your documentaries, I noted that you present clips of the accusers or whoever's speaking the wrong information, and then you juxtapose it with something that contradicts them, and you don't have any narrator. So is there a reason why you use that? Is there a reason why you don't use a narrator? Is there that a technique that you have chosen, and will that be used on trial by media as well?
So you're talking about the Aftermath documentary, right?
Yes, yes, the aftermath.
So the Aftermath documentary, I kind of designed it for YouTube. So there was supposed to be no narrative. It was just fact with allegation, fact, allegation, fact. Trial by media will be nothing like the Aftermath. It will be an actual narrative. There will be interviews, all footage. I mean, I'll have to use archive footage, but it's driven by footage that I'm going to shoot. So
Oh,
the reason why I did the Aftermath like that, I didn't, because my budget was zero for the Leaving Neverlands, the Aftermath.
mm-hmm.
I just wanted to show it very basic as it is. And then for the one that I showed at the TCL Chinese Theatre, I actually recorded my vocals for it, but I didn't put it on there because I was a bit indifferent about, I was thinking people might, because I get some messages sometimes of people saying this and that. So I thought, I don't want to really put my voice into it. So I just left it.
Okay, okay. but you will have a narrator for the new one coming, Trial by Media.
I will have a narrator. I kind of don't want a narrator because I kind of feel like that's lazy storytelling to just tell the audience. I have a timeline that I'm going to ask every interviewee, and the interviewee is going to take you through the timeline. So I'm going to cover everything from the beginning.
Okay. Okay.
You know, I have a question about the interviewee that you just mentioned. In fact, the question comes from Julie Jacobs. She wants to know, are you planning to interview anyone who was close to Michael, work with Michael? And will you tell us who you're planning to interview?
I have a whole list of people that are close to him. I'm not going to reveal any names yet or anything that I've shot with whoever shot. I'm going to release like little bits of things here and there, but I'm not going to show the person yet because there's like certain things that they have to sign, all of this type of thing. But I've got a list of people, yeah, people close to Michael Jackson, everybody who's involved with the Trial by Media on both sides.
Who can help tell the story?
Mm-hmm.
Well, yes.
Okay. Manuela from Brazil wants to know, sorry, Argentina or Brazil, I'm not sure. She wants to know how the pandemic has affected your project workflow, and especially with interviewing and things like that. And how have you gotten around that problem?
I've gotten around it to just pack in all the research that I can, because I feel like the research doesn't end. When it comes to filming, at this point, there's nothing that I can do at this point. England's on absolute full lockdown, so I can't even meet nobody. I mean, I can set something up outdoors, and then you have to worry about lighting and all of this, and because I'm doing it myself, because I'm keeping the budget really low.
Right.
But at this point, from probably early December till now, there's no filming that I can do.
Right. Right. Okay, so Leaving Neverland aired in March of 2019, and you immediately uploaded that blowing the lid off of the accusers almost within the same month. So, that was pretty quick turnaround. How did you move so quickly? It was a heavy topic, and what made you feel like you needed to be a very strong advocate for Michael?
I've always been a fan of Michael Jackson. I was never in the fan community. And when Leaving Neverland came out, I had a strong feeling to say something. When I started scrolling on Twitter, you see that information is just so in your face that it's just not true. It's just so there. And originally I wanted to write an article about it. I wanted to do something. And then I thought, why don't I just make a documentary? And then that video I made from certain clips that I found, and I just wanted to get it out there. I wanted to do something to show the information. And then I wanted to write an article for the aftermath, and that turned into a YouTube documentary.
Right. Okay.
And then that actually led on to me making a feature documentary right now.
Right, because it has 245,000 views, right? That on your YouTube. I mean, were you really shocked by how much attention you got on that first one?
I was, yeah. I was quite surprised.
Yeah. So did that give you that kind of make you think, oh, I could really do the much better one, much longer, that's gonna be Netflix ready? Or
I think after the aftermath, I wasn't really concerned about views. I kind of more concerned about getting the story out there. So I mean, I'm happy so many people have watched it. It's more about just getting the truth out there for me to basically make people think. That's the whole point of it. It's not necessary.
But views are, but the views are what you do need to get it out there, because frankly, we are the voice for Michael Jackson, the fan base. So if they share your link, then that's getting your word, getting the word out there. So it's really important. And half a million on that other one is just mind-boggling, really, when you think about it. You have no promotion, nobody's helping you get it out, and it's just
quite amazing.
took up. Yeah.
That's all the community. That's incredible.
We have a question from Jana. For Jen, she wants to know where you plan to release the documentary, on Netflix or other platforms.
Well, I'm designing it for Netflix, but obviously now you can't. Netflix is so big, they could do anything. So all you can do at this point is design it for them. And if they don't take it, you take it to another streaming service.
Sure.
But this is not going to be a YouTube documentary, not at all. This is designs. I mean, I'm asking for 20,000 on the GoFundMe, and that for a documentary is a very low budget. And I'm kind of using the money in a certain way to make it a $200,000 budget. You know, I can talk about aspects of filming that I've just really cut down. I'm doing most of the work, so a lot of the cost is being cut down. But everything that's being filmed in the format, everything is done for Netflix.
Great.
When you say it's for Netflix, what do you have to do to it to make it appropriate, or for them to want to have it on their platform?
Well, first it has to be shot correctly. It has to be shot with the right camera. It has to be shot with a certain bit rate in the video. The audio has to be captured in a certain way. It has to be backed up a certain way. All of these certain criteria that they give to you. For documentaries, it's a little bit more lenient, but there's all these criteria. I mean, they take documentaries that are not following the criteria as long as it's a good story.
Right.
But it's just smarter to do it the correct way in the beginning. But in the end, anything could happen. Then you have to get a Netflix agent to pitch it to them, things like that.
Okay. And you have figured all that out, everything that you need to make it as acceptable as possible.
Yeah.
So that you can get it done. Okay. I know that GoFundMe has been a little bit tough because of COVID. First of all, people are money's tight for a lot of people. They've lost their jobs, and
I know.
I mean, we can promote it more and much as we can. Is there any other financial ways you can achieve to get some funds?
Not really. I mean, I'm still working for companies, and I have my own money that I'm putting into it, of course. Other than that, not really. And I kind of feel bad about pushing it, especially in a pandemic, so I don't really share it that much.
Right.
And when anybody shares it on Twitter, I'm so thankful for it. And when people donate, I'm so thankful for the donations. But because we're all in a pandemic, it's tough for everybody.
Yes, it's very.
But it just cannot be done without the budget. It's just impossible. I took a class at UCLA, actually. It was about for the filmmaker that's starting and you need to raise funds. The lesson that we learned was you have to get over the fact that you need to ask for money to make your film, because otherwise it's not going to get made. And that was literally the lesson of the whole entire class. The whole semester was get over that.
Right.
And you shouldn't feel bad about asking for money. What I found is the Michael Jackson fan base is very generous, and they, each month they're sending flowers to Michael's site on Hollywood Terrace. And if they believe in something, they will support it. And certainly to disprove some of the lies about Leaving Neverland. Alexandra is in the chat room. She's suggesting that fans make a donation once a month, which I think is a lovely idea. So, we're here to support you, and
Thank you.
It takes so you put out a great documentary, because it's so necessary right now.
Yes.
No, thank you so much. I'm so appreciative of every single donation. It's absolutely amazing. It blows my mind, actually.
I have another question, but one of the things that I'm very impressed with the Michael Jackson fan base, that they're activists, and they were really turned up after Leaving Neverland premiered. And they found out discrepancies right away in what was that documentary. Are you planning to use what the fans found out, like the train station and some other things in your doc, to disprove that documentary, or faux documentary, as I call it?
I am, yeah. It has to be told in a certain way. I won't be attacking it the same way the Aftermath did, but I will be using it for sure.
Great.
Okay. So, so I have I want to hear your opinion on why you think the media is so bent on mischaracterizing Michael all these years. I mean, ever since he was a young, I mean, in 19, he was getting the weirdest questions. So, what is your opinion on why that is?
I think it's because Michael Jackson doesn't fit into where they want him to be. He became. I mean, Thriller was on it was #1 for 37 weeks. He absolutely just killed the charts. He actually revived the music industry in the late 70s. It was on a low, and when people are in the stores buying Thriller, for example, they were buying other people's music, and he was actually the only artist really to do that. And I think he doesn't fit their character of who they want to push up and be at the top. And I think I kind of want to push it around the issue. I think it's because he's Black and he's just so amazingly talented, and he, even after all of that's going on, he still has his fans, and everybody has his back. I mean, I was amazed with all the photos and all the videos that I got of people protesting after Leaving Neverland. I was shocked. I was amazed, and that's the part that the media doesn't want to show anybody, and it's a constant attack on that. And I think it's because he's just the biggest artist. I think his character was bigger than his talent, and you just can't get rid of him.
That's a great sentence. Yes, it was. Definitely his character was bigger than his talent. I agree 100%. I have been ranting for years about it being racism, and I've been told by even Michael Jackson fans that I shouldn't bring race into it, but I don't think we can ignore that factor.
That's right.
It's very big, especially in America. They always want to make the Black person feel inferior. And when someone is superior and they're Black, then it goes totally against their whole concept of whites being, better, smarter, whatever, more talented. So they have to bring them down some way. And they pick the worst possible way for him. His mother said that often, that he told her, why did they pick that particular thing to hurt me with?
Well, the most sensitive.
If you listen to the James Baldwin quote about Michael, he predicted a lot of this, and this was early in Michael's career, that Michael was going to be a target. And if he was smart enough to realize that early on, that he could save himself some problems. So James Baldwin certainly predicted it.
Yeah, that was an amazing quote that he had. It's such an insight.
Yeah, well, he went through his own tribulations, being
Exactly.
a Black man and a writer, and he was pretty amazing himself. And I'm glad he noted that about Michael. I think Michael, thank God, he was so strong, and I think because he was so dedicated to his mission, I call it a mission. That he felt he had a mission on this earth, and that if nothing was going to stop him, and no matter what they did, he kept on going. And you have to, it's just amazing that he was able to still produce music after 93. And, and he just went on to do other albums. He was just an amazingly strong person. I don't know how many other people could stand that sort of a torrent of negativity and still survive, mentally and physically. So I can see that you also have a lot of dedication and drive. So I'm really looking forward to what you're going to produce. I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, I can't wait to get it out there.
Yeah. So did you
But our next guest is ready and here.
Okay, well, let me just say, did anything else you wanted to speak on before we move on to Pez? Did we cover?
We covered everything. Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to everybody for everybody sharing and watching. I'm just so thankful. I don't know how much I can say it. Every retweet, every comment, every like, every donation, I'm so thankful. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And thank you for believing in me, for telling this story, because I know I can do it the right way. I'm really passionate about documentaries and I'm passionate about Michael Jackson. And I'm more passionate about the truth with every situation. And I think everything lands on our sides here. And it just needs to be told in the correct way to get it on the main platform. And that's my entire goal.
That's great. That's great. Goal. And just before you go, this Yuli Erdrich, not how you pronounce your last name, she's from Israel, and she said she would be glad to give you a translation in Hebrew if you ever need translations. And I'm sure there are other fans who would offer their services in that regard as well, because this man is loved all over the world. This is, no one owns him. No country owns Michael Jackson. And our little chat always proves that from all over, they just love him. So you will have support from the global family and obviously from us. Whatever you want to update, let us know and we will put it out there and help you as much as we can. And we really appreciate you coming.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for having me.
We're going to put in the chat room if people want to donate. The fans want to donate to the GoFundMe. So
yes, I'll get that.
We'll put that in there. We want to thank you so much, Jen, for being with us. And we'll have to have you back as you
thank you very much.
Move on with the documentary.
I'd love to be back.
You got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
But did you want to add one more thing or?
No, that's all. I'm just going to put the link in the chat box.
Okay.
And then I think you can just move on with Pez if he's ready.
Pez is there. So Pez, turn on your microphone. There you go.
There we go.
Hey.
Hey, how's it going?
Wonderfully, wonderfully. So we're really excited. I'm happy to have Pez back on the Zoom chat. Pez is a good friend of mine, and I loved having him on before because he really gave us some insight about this story of history, which happens to be one of my favorite albums that Michael did. But let me give you some background on Pez for those of us who are joining us. I already know all this, but Pez is a writer, an author, and most importantly, a Michael Jackson fan. You're based in London. He released his first book, Off the Wall from the Beginning, Brick by Brick, in 2016, which the book explored Michael Jackson's rise from the lead singer of the Jackson 5 up to the release and success of Off the Wall. Well, he's here today to talk about his second book, The Story of History, and that really goes into the inspiration and the creative process about the 15 songs that appeared on History. And the book itself, you can find the book on 1611.com, which we'll put in the chat room, or Amazon UK. So welcome. So before we start with you, Pez, I want to play a little video that I think you will recognize.
Oh no.
And we'll play some of it. Okay. So let's go full screen. So that's a teaser about the teaser. And Pez, what can you tell us about the whole making of this promotional video?
Well, firstly, thank you, because I thought that was going to be some video of us having
Oh,
drank
no, the
too
next
much
time you come
in
on, I'm
Vegas.
gonna do
So that's why I sort of, oh no. Wow, the teaser. So, whenever I see that, I never don't get chills watching it. Even to this day, it's still, when you see it, you're like, oh, it's amazing. And nobody to date has done an album trailer like that. It's just not happened. And obviously that's Michael for you.
Mhm.
So the teaser is an interesting one because it came at a time when they hadn't actually decided that history was going to be old songs and new songs. So at the time Michael went off to Budapest to shoot History, it was just a greatest hits album with a couple of extras. So initially, the initial idea was Michael had seen a film, a Disney film, Blank Check, I believe it was called, which was directed by Rupert Wainwright. And in his, the way he does, he says, I'm going to have that guy work for me. So he connected with Rupert Wainwright and had him over for dinner at Neverland and just sort of, saw how he was and decided if he wanted to work together. After the meal, Michael was like, yep, you're doing my next project. So Michael sort of said to Sony, I have this vision for this video. It's going to be huge. And they kind of looked at him and was like, maybe not. How much money do you need? And Michael was like, oh, about $4 million. So they were kind of, for a trailer, for an album, really? Are you sure? Anyway, they sort of agreed a budget. They got Rupert on board. And the plan was that they were to go and film in Eastern Europe somewhere because it was cheaper to have an army, a skilled army brought in to film versus sort of getting people in the US who would cost a lot more through unions and whatnot. So they settled on Budapest, and Michael wasn't going to be part of the teaser at all. So it was all going to be kind of, arm shots, leg shots, feet, as you see in the teaser. And after the first day of shooting, they kind of sent the tape back to Michael and said, this is what we shot. And he was like, I'll see you tomorrow. And he jumped straight on a plane and flew to Budapest. And there's those famous shots of him coming out of the plane with Lisa Marie. But I mean, that teaser took around sort of 4 days to film. There was meant to be loads more in it, sort of, people in Egypt and people in Africa. And it was meant to be a much bigger piece. But in the end, it kind of got condensed down. And I actually went to Budapest to find where it was shot a little while before I started work on the book. And I obviously got Heroes Square, where the big statue is and all the kind of surrounding. And I wanted to find the bit where they did the marching. So they filmed some outside the castle, and then they filmed some separate bits in a random place. And I thought, I am not leaving this city until I find it. And it only happened, we were walking through a car park to get to the next location, and I'm sort of looking around thinking, this backdrop looks familiar. And we found it, and they shot most of the marching scenes just in a random car park. So I dug a brick out of the floor, and I have that in my, in my cupboard. I was like, Michael Jackson stepped on this brick.
I love that.
So yeah, I mean, and when it came out, funnily enough, they played it in cinemas in the US, and people didn't like it. They just didn't react well to it at all. They just thought it was over the top, it was vain. And as Michael said to Diane Sawyer, good, that's exactly what I wanted. And I think it is, it's totally what he wanted. He wanted a spectacle for an album that was going to be larger than life, and that was the teaser.
Talk about the history statue, because I know you go into some depth about that statue in the book and how it came to be.
Yeah, so Diana Walzak, who made the statue, has become a great friend of mine. And she initially got signed on to the project. It was around, I want to say, March, April 1994. So again, it was still only a greatest hits album. It wasn't yet the double disc we know. And Diana had signed on to do the project, and they were meant to be complete in about 6 weeks. So they said, it's going to take 6 weeks. We want a full statue to be made and then digitally converted. The idea being that if they had done a photo shoot, for example, Michael would want to continually edit and edit and edit and edit. And so they said, we'll never get this cover done. If we have an actual statue, he's going to love it, and we can digitize it, and then we can just edit digitally. So that was the sort of plan that they went with. So they turned the statue around very quickly. They held a photo shoot in New York. And one of the instructions was that Michael needed to remove all of his makeup so that they could get the full kind of features from which they would sculpt. He sort of went off for about 30 minutes and came back still in full makeup. So, you know, obviously, understandably, he had some image conscious issues that he was dealing with, and he didn't want to go out, understandably, without makeup on. And they're those pictures that, you know, are now quite famous, where he's sort of standing like this, and we've got the head shot and the side shot. And one of the requests Michael made at the shoot, he said to Diana, please ensure those photos of me never get out. I never want them to go out. Diana has always stuck to that policy, and she's never put them out. So you can deduce from that what you will as to how they ended up out. But Michael was very clear that he didn't want those images seen, and you know, now they're kind of sold around the world. So they did the shoot, and then Diana went off to sculpt this statue. The whole project for the cover ended up taking 6 months. So it's meant to take 6 weeks. It took 6 months because, in true Michael fashion, he wanted additions, he wanted changes. I think he wanted police badges here and here and here and probably here, you know. He wanted his thighs slimmed down. He had a whole host of changes. He wanted eyeballs added. And in the end, they eventually managed to finish it. And unbeknown to most people, it's actually a white marble statue. So many people look at the statue and they think it's grey. And for years, I thought it was grey as well. But if you look very carefully on the album cover, you can see some of the uplighting shows it's actually a white marble statue, which was always the intention, but I don't sort of think it ever came across. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of really quickly how the statue was created. Obviously, as I'm sure you can imagine, it wasn't quite as plain sailing as that, because Michael was a perfectionist and liked everything to sort of be on point.
One of the things that you mentioned in the book is crews were told not to wind Michael up, because, which I love that term, because he would always want to add things and he appreciated collaboration. So, and that certainly was the case with the History album itself, which turned into a double album for him. Can you talk about why that became a double album, and also the impressions that the retailers got when they found out that Michael was going to release a double album?
Yeah, so just to touch on the first point about people not winding him up, I was chatting with somebody the other day who worked on many of the short films, and it's very interesting because directors would obviously go to Michael and say, oh, we could have this, we could have that. And Michael would be like, yes, this is what I want. You know, we could have a waterfall, do it. We could have a globe flying from the ceiling, do it. And Michael was like, you know, the problem is that a director could keep that shoot going for days and days and days and charging Michael. Sony were paying the bills, but they were obviously charging it back to Michael. So you know, Sony tried to take, representatives from Sony tried to take the kind of middle ground and say, you know, we'll be the bad guy. No, you can't do that. And ultimately, the idea was to save Michael money in the long run, because it would be him paying for it. So that happened quite a lot. I think You Are Not Alone was one of the ones where they really sort of went in and said, any more and you're out, because they really tried to push it. But coming back to the question on, you know, moving from a single disc to a double disc. So the Greatest Hits album was meant to come out sort of at the end of the Dangerous era, so around November '93. And it was this long overdue process. It was originally meant to be decades, you know, sort of at the end of the bad era, and it dragged on because Dangerous was new songs. So they decided November '93 was the date. Obviously, things happened in Michael's life, as we all know. We don't need to rake over. And so they decided, you know what, this is not the right time. He'd just come out of rehab, or just about to go into rehab. I forget which timeline. And it wasn't the right time for a Greatest Hits. So they kind of postponed it, and they said, okay, summer of '94. So that's where the teaser started to be worked on. That's where Diana started to work on the statue, and they started to get this thing going. And it was always meant to be Greatest Hits plus 3 new songs. So Michael, obviously the 3 songs that Michael had been working on was Stranger in Moscow was definitely one that he'd worked on. I can't recall what the other ones were that were started quite early on. But you know, sort of within that process, Sony would often pop into the studio and find out how he was getting on. You know, how's it going? Are you almost done? Michael would like, yeah, almost, you know. And then they sort of had this big presentation. So in the US, traditionally in the 90s, what would happen is when somebody's selling a record, the record company would go to this big event and they would basically sell the album to the retailers. We've got Michael Jackson coming out in the summer and you want to buy 200 units for your shop. And that's, you know, basically a pitch of how they did it, a bit like speed dating. So they would sit with Virgin, then they would sit with Tower Records, and they would try and basically sell the artist. And so what the record company did was said to these shops, don't buy anybody else, buy Michael Jackson. We've got the best greatest hits coming out in the summer. So all the shops were like, okay, great, we won't buy anybody. And then Michael didn't deliver the album for summer of '94. So the retailers were kind of a bit taken aback and was like, you know, you screwed us over with this one. So they said, okay, fine, Christmas '94, you'll get this album at Christmas. Obviously, Christmas of '94 came, and this is where Michael and Janet had just started to work on Scream. Tabloid Junkie had started to take shape because Michael had said to them, I need a song that sounds like The Knowledge, which is Janet's song. And they started to form Tabloid Junkie. And so all these new songs were coming through, and Michael sort of said, this needs to be a double album. You know, I need this to be everything. So there was a bit of sort of skepticism about whether this would work. And they went back to the retailers at the following convention, the following year in early '95. Now, the only way they were going to get them to buy into this album is to have Michael there himself. And how do you get Michael Jackson to turn up to anything? You give him an award.
Right.
So they knew Michael would love an award. So they were like, just think of something, you know, greatest whatever, give him an award, he'll turn up. So I think they had previously, many years prior, given this humanitarian aid award, and they dug it out, dusted it off, and called him up and said, hey, Michael, you've won an award, I'll be there. So Michael went to this event, which is called NAMM, and he stood up in front of all the retailers. He got a standing ovation from everybody. And he said, you know, we've done this journey together. So we did Thriller together. You know, I made it, you sold it. We did Bad together. I made it, you sold it. And this one is going to be great. And, you know, come on this journey with me and we'll have a huge hit together. And they, you know, he won them over. And he looked great, I might add, in the process. He had like a red jacket on. He looked fantastic.
I remember, yes.
Yeah, exactly. And so, you know, he won the retailers over, and they placed big orders to start with. Obviously, you know, the shipments slowed down, particularly in the US, towards the end of '95. And there was a little bit of kind of exhaustion with the campaign and the media circuit. But, you know, in that initial period, he really won them over.
I want to ask you about the You Are Not Alone video, song and video. In my opinion, it was Michael at his most vulnerable, certainly in that video. Can you give us some behind the scenes of what happened with the making of that video, especially because Lisa Marie is part of that video as well?
Yeah, I mean, that video in particular, I personally don't like the video. I don't think it's the best representation of the song, personally, you know, but obviously that was the choice they went with it. I'm sure, as I mentioned previously, they had bigger ideas that got condensed down. But yeah, you know, you're absolutely right. It really was Michael at his most vulnerable. And when they were filming, there's a great photo of Dan Beck from Sony and Michael on stage, and they're having a discussion, and Michael's sort of standing like this. And Dan is saying to him, you are not the you in You Are Not Alone. You're saying to somebody else, you're not alone. You know, I'm here with you. It's meant to be an uplifting song. It's meant to be you kind of, you know, talking somebody through it. But Michael really took that song personally and took it into himself as if he was the you. So they, you know, they had to kind of reshoot it a couple of times to really get that emotion across, that he was the support system and not the person in the position of, you know, sadness. But when it came to shooting with Lisa Marie, nobody knew it was going to happen except Michael and Lisa, and kind of, you know, pulled the director to one side and was like, we've got this idea. And they just went off and shot it. And it was a very close set. There was Michael, Lisa, the director, and the photographer, and that was it. Nobody else was allowed on set. And, you know, Michael said to the cast and crew, you know, she's my wife. She's going to be in a state of undress. She's never been in a music video before. And so I'm closing the set. And I think, that just is a testament to him as a husband as well, that he really took her knee. He didn't just sort of say, we're superstars, get in front of the camera. He really took the time to understand the situation. And they shot it and they delivered it to Sony, who were like, when did we agree to this? But, they paid the invoices and that became the video.
Now talk about part of the video that was supposed to be the angel wings.
I love that. So the angel wings is probably my favorite story. I've said it a few times, but it's my favorite story from the book, that Michael had come up with this idea that he wanted to appear as an angel in the video. I mean, you know what? When you're Michael Jackson, why not? Do what you like. So he kind of, sold this idea to the director, who was like, ka-ching, we'll do that. And they went off and shot this scene. And when they presented the finished video to Sony, and they had the playback in the Sony offices, and they got to the beginning and the end, and both ends was this angel in the water, and everybody kind of went, what is this? Why is he an angel in this video? This is not right. So Dan Beck, who was handling the project at the time, sort of called Michael up and said, look, I know what you're trying to do. I understand your heart. I understand your intention. However, the media will slaughter you for this. They will, they see you shirtless with angel wings on in a pool. It's not going to go very well for you. And, history is very much about building up your image, not tearing it down. Bearing in mind at the time, they just got over the controversy of the lyrics for They Don't Care About Us. Mm-hmm. So they just sort of ridden out that wave, and then on come the angel wings. So Michael sort of said, no, I'm having the wings. To hell with media, I'm having the wings. So Dan sort of said to him, look, if I put it to a panel, if I put it to a vote and, I get some market research, will you accept, what the market research says? And it should be noted, Michael was always very accepting of market research. I think there's this common misconception that he was kind of, detached from reality and didn't know what was going on, didn't know what people were saying about him. It's not true. They would often present market research to Michael with some of the most horrible things in there, and he would read it. He would read every single page. Particularly when history came out, they surveyed a lot of people from different backgrounds, different ethnicities, different cultures, and they had some really harsh feedback about who Michael thought he was, and in terms of his skin condition and all those sorts of things, and he absorbed all of that. So in that situation, Michael said, "Yep, okay, get me market research." So they called all the interns from across the different departments at Sony into one of the director's offices, and they played them the video. And they asked them questions at the end of it. What did you think of Michael's hair? What did you think of Lisa Marie in the video? What did you think of the song? What did you think of the angel wings? And all this sort of 30, 40 interns said, we love it. And so the execs from Sony just like, no, you don't. So they sort of went outside and had a little huddle up. And the lady who was running the market research said, they're lying. They're all lying. So they had this conversation, and she said, look, put it this way. You've called 30 interns into the office of one of the biggest people in the company to talk about your biggest artist. They're terrified. Of course they're going to tell you they love it. So they went back in and they said, so a few more questions. We know you love the wings. What would your friends think about the wings? And so they sort of said, oh, our friends would hate it. They'd think it's terrible. They'd think it's tacky. Why would he do that? So that was the answer they needed. And Dan phoned Michael and said, look, the feedback is no. And he said, Michael was very upset about it and was like, people don't appreciate art. But they came to a compromise that it would appear on a DVD in the future, which it did. It was on volume 2. And then I think they literally had 40 minutes from that discussion to get the final version over to MTV for the world debut. So that's sort of how fine they were cutting it between which version was going to play. And eventually the version with the wings sort of, without the wings, went out, and the wings version ended up on a video.
I have a question from Samantha. She wants to know, what do you want fans to take away from your book?
That's a great question. I think, I'd like people to take away from it what I took away from writing it, which was just how much I learned about the album, about the people involved, about the mechanics behind building this project. I think there's often this idea that an artist will go away, sit in a corner, write an album, record it into a mic, and here it is. And if it fails, it's all their fault. And if it's a success, it's all their success. But there's so many mechanics behind that. And I wanted to kind of convey that in the book. I really kind of approached it from having one guy from the record company, one guy from the studio, one of the photographers, and sort of getting them to each tell me their part, which then makes the story of history. And also, I think taking away from it just what an immense time that was for Michael. A couple of times writing it sounds really dramatic, like sort of, but I had to stop for, one point an entire week, just because writing it sometimes was such a heavy burden, reading this abuse that he used to get, and reading the things they would say about him and reading the reviews about the album. I was just like, I can't imagine what this guy went through with this. He wants to put his music out into the world, and here's a flop, here's this, here's that. It's like, and ultimately Michael could have easily said, after everything he went through in '93, I'm done. I retire. I've got a great back catalogue. I have Thriller. I don't need to do anything else. I'm done.
Yeah.
And that's kind of always a point that I've put across with people who question what happened in '93. That Michael was so adamant to have his say. He took an entire commercial record and had his say. He could have put out an entire album of "I'm happily married. Here's my love songs," and completely ignored it. But he didn't. He used that opportunity to have his say. That's not what a guilty person does.
No.
Why would he waste such a prime opportunity with a brand new album to go talking about stuff that happened 2 years prior?
Exactly.
Because he had to have his say and he had to set the record straight.
Right.
And I hope, that kind of comes across in the book, that just this, immense intention to deliver that record and to say, this is how I feel, this is what happened, and you're not going to take away my voice.
I have a question about that particularly. In this album, this double disc album, he has a cover of "Come Together."
Yes.
That's the only song that isn't his. Do you have any insight as to why he put a cover in that album?
So I've always found that Michael had this love affair with "Come Together." I had been desperate to interview Bill Bottrell, who created "Come Together" with Michael for the book. Didn't get him for the book, and then had him on KV Global this Christmas, as I'm sure you've seen. So I was like, damn it. But, Michael had always had this love affair, and they were originally going to record another Beatles song together, which had not very many lyrics. I'm not a Beatles fanatic, so I don't remember the name. And Bill sort of said to Michael, how about "Come Together"? And Michael's like, oh yeah, I love that. Let's do it. And they recorded "Come Together" sort of, it was around '86, I believe. It was during the Bad sessions. And then it ended up in Moonwalker, and then it ended up as the B-side for Remember the Time. So we'd already had it. And I really felt that Michael had this love for it, that he wanted it to have a proper home. So they'd been working on, various other songs that had basically been finished or had been, close to completion, that were strong contenders for the album. Much Too Soon was in the running as late as December '94. Much Too Soon was still one of the tracks for the album. And they'd finished it. So the engineers turned up to work one day and went into the studio, and the other engineer who'd been there earlier said, Michael wants to pull up "Come Together" on the desk. He wants to hear "Come Together." So they was like, okay, well, where do we get it from? So they had to source it from Michael's archive, put it up on the desk. And they basically didn't do much to it, just sort of tightened it up a bit and put it on the record. And I inquired to a lot of people, do you know why that particular song was there, especially in light of the fact that other songs were finished? And nobody knows the reason why, that he wanted that on there. I'd like to think maybe it's a royalties thing, where because he owned the catalogue, he thought, let me make some more cash out of it. I don't know. But no, the honest answer is I don't know why it's on there, but I feel that it speaks to Michael's love for that song, that he's like, keeps bringing it back and popping it on an album. I'd have liked, I might add, the full version on the album would have been better. And initially it was the kind of full version with the, I'm not going to sing, the extended bit at the end, but they had to cut it down because the entire album was too long.
Right. Well, we want to thank you. It's clear to me, Pez, we're going to have you back because there's so many more stories in here.
I feel like a boomerang.
That's right. We're going to bring you back, but we want to thank you. The book, again, is called The Story of History, and you can get it on Amazon UK. And what was the other website, Pez?
It's on 1611.com. We're, hopefully it's going to be on some better distribution in the US. Is something that's being looked into for this year, so that more people can get to read it and hopefully learn some exciting bits about the album.
Well, we're going to bring you back. Do you have another book in mind? Are you thinking about what else you want to do next?
I do. I have started work on something new, which hopefully put out this year. So
okay, well, you definitely be back then.
I did say no books ever again, and here we are. So
I knew another one had to be coming. So
I know.
Thank you so much, and we want to thank everyone for joining us today. For both of, I call you both our advocates of Michael. Just anyone who chronicles him and his history, there you go, and his life. It's important to us in the fan community. So I thank you for that.
Well, thank you for having me.
All right, thank you everyone for joining us. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.